So I was trying to remember. Let's see. I think yeah, we're 2 minutes after the hour. So I think we might just ease into things. And as people join, I'll catch up. But I was trying to remember when I would have met you, like 2011, 2012.
Let's see.
Yoga opened in 2010.
Yes, I think around then. And you know what I was realizing today as I did one of your classes, I did some of your Earth Day class just to sort of ground myself and to reconnect with you. One of the last public classes I took was yours, that Sunday class. I stopped practice in studios at that time and started practicing at home, which has actually been a great transition for me, but it made me miss community so much. It actually made me start to tremble and cry in your class. Yeah. It just took me back. It took me back to that time on the mat with you, with all those people, with all the breath, the communal breath I don't have anymore. And I didn't know I missed it.
And if it was when I was there, that was 2015, because I left San Francisco in August 2015. So that's almost 5 years ago. Yeah. And it's true, there's so many opportunities now for us to practice online, and it's easy and you can knock it out real fast, but you're missing the sweat and the breath and that sense of really moving through it together and not being able to answer your phone if it rings, and sort of shutting the door and getting lost in that breath for 90 minutes. Yeah. And you can't replicate that even with a Zoom class.
You can't. Although I have to say, when I do my own practice, I've gotten pretty good at turning the phone to airplane mode, and because sometimes I'm listening to music and stuff like that, but of eliminating some of that distraction. It is true when you do a Zoom class, I hear, I haven't done them, but there are a lot of people that you're looking at, right? And it's different from feeling them and closing your eyes. You're having to look at them in a different way. So are you teaching on Zoom right now? Yeah. And how's that going?
To this point, because I have a 6-year-old and it's like a wild card. At what point will somebody roll in and say, Mom, I need some popcorn? But actually, so that's why I've been recording and posting them on YouTube. Also because of the time difference. And I'll just mention here, I know we have folks sort of signing on from all over the place. My name is Rachel, and I'm with Studio B, which is a mindfulness training company based in the Northeast United States. However, I'm based in Basel, Switzerland. So here it's about 8 o'clock in the evening. And Phyllis is in Berkeley, California, which was my home for 12 years and where we met probably 8-9 years ago already. So we have 11 o'clock in the morning for you. And that 9-hour difference is so dramatic. I find that even as we are 5 years away from California now, it will always feel like home. And so the fact that there's that huge difference in time zones just always really strikes me as a reminder that we've moved so far away. So it's good to see you, and it's good to see the morning light. For all of you who don't know Phyllis Grant, here she is. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Really briefly, for anyone who's new, we've been running a Resilience and Steadiness series here at Studio B since about the last week of March, when everything really started to unfold, especially in the United States. Here in Switzerland, we're about a week and a half ahead because of what had been happening in Italy. So here we are now, almost 8 weeks after, and we've been sort of just meeting daily to offer mindfulness practices, lessons, yin yoga, things like that. And on Fridays, we welcome a guest from a field or an industry especially affected by COVID. So we've spoken with musical theater performers whose shows were canceled, financial investment experts, integrative medical doctors, and whatnot. And as we sort of thought about our plan for this series, Phyllis, you came to mind immediately, because of course I've known and loved you for years, but I've also known that for 6 or 7 years you've been laboring to birth this baby that is your book. And now it's here, there she is, gorgeous. And I'm so glad you have a hard copy, because here in Switzerland I just had to read it on Kindle, and I'm aching to get my hands on a real copy, so that will come in time.
Yes.
But I know you've been really gestating this baby for so long, and here, just as you're about to birth it into the world, coronavirus hits. And I thought, knowing your background in so many diverse industries, in the restaurant industry, which has been hit so hard by this, in the arts, which has been hit so hard, as a parent, there are so many fascinating angles that I think you've really lived and embodied and are embodying now as you sort of muddle your way through launching a book in the middle of lockdown. So thank you so much for being here, and welcome to all of you who are joining us. You're all muted right now, but if anyone has questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to type them in the chat or to unmute yourself and ask. And before we jump in, I do want to just read a few official words about Phyllis, all right, so we can brag a little. Phyllis Grant is an IACP finalist for personal essays and memoir writing, and a 3-time Saveur Food Blog Award finalist for her blog, Dash and Bella, which you started in
2009, yeah.
So it's 11 years old, when your kids were teens. Yeah. And Phyllis has cooked in world-renowned restaurants, including Nobu, Michael's, and Bouley. Her essays and recipes have been published in a dozen anthologies and cookbooks, including Best Food Writing in both 2015 and 2016. Her work has been featured in Esquire, the Oprah Magazine, the New York Times, Real Simple, Saveur, HuffPost, Time, San Francisco Chronicle, Food 52, and Salon. She lives in Berkeley, California, with her husband and 2 children.
And lots of cookbooks. I was just thinking I live within the right here.
So Everything is Under Control has garnered rave reviews all over the place. You might have seen it in NPR, the New York Times, the LA Times, the San Francisco Chronicle, Bon Appetit. And it's a memoir about appetite as it comes, goes, and refocuses its object of desire. Phyllis's story follows the sometimes smooth, sometimes jagged, always revealing contours of her life. From her days as a dancer struggling to find her place at Juilliard, to her experiences in and out of 4-star kitchens in New York City, to falling in love with her future husband and leaving the city after 9/11 for California, where her children are born. All the while, a sense of longing pulses in each stage as she moves through the headspace of a young woman longing to be sustained by a city, into that of a mother now sustaining a family herself. Written with the transparency of a diarist, Everything is Under Control is an unput-downable series of vignettes, followed by tried and true recipes from Grant's table, a heart-rending yet unsentimental portrait of the highs and lows of young adulthood, motherhood, and a life in the kitchen. So if you haven't had a chance to finish the book yet, please do. I sat down and read it in about 3 hours and powered through the whole piece and wept the whole time. So thank you, Phyllis. It's perfect, and it's you. And I'm so grateful that you put this out into the world.
Thank you. Wow.
I just remembered the other day as I was thinking about chatting tonight, one particular Sunday morning, and I remember Sunday mornings at Flying Studios, where we met in Temescal, Oakland, just down the street from Berkeley. And Sundays were sweaty and hot, and there were 60 people packed into this room, and Phyllis rushes in right before class starts. She unrolls her mat, she's ready to rock, and she comes up and says, "Hey, I'm here, I've got to leave right after class. My husband's working out of town. I left the kids at home, and I just said to them, hey, no knives."
I can't believe I said that. I don't remember that.
Your book, I thought, of course, no knives. You know, reading about you sharpening the knives and what happened to you when you were cut. And I just remembered that moment, and I thought already how far away that is, because your kids have grown up so much since then. And life is very different now than it was even then when I would have first met you. So I guess what I would love to hear from you is, you know, what has this process of writing and birthing this book been like? And at what point did you realize that the book launch you'd prepared for a year plus was not going to look like what you thought it would?
Well, I guess I'll start with the second question, which is every day there's new information. You know, I don't know what I'm going to wake up to. In some ways, I dread turning on my phone. Obviously for the news, and also just for all the changes in terms of things that were going to happen that have now been canceled. You know, we're all pivoting, you know. But so let me go back to your first question, which is about the process of writing this book. I started writing this in the 90s when I went back to school to study writing. So I'm 50 as of a few weeks ago. And so this was when I was around 27. I went back to school to study writing, and I had just stopped working in restaurants. And I started writing about what it was like to be in these kitchens as one of, you know, there are very few women. So being in that environment and the adrenaline and the pulsing of these, sorry, I've totally lost my train of thought. I think I got so overwhelmed by doing your yoga this morning and seeing your face. I'm just like, my head is spinning. But going back to that time, I started writing about those experiences in the kitchen, and it was therapeutic. And soon after that, we moved to California. I had children. I had a lot of postpartum depression. And the thing that sustained me was writing about these hard experiences. And I was writing about them to my friends. And I was able to keep these little snippets of writing in my email. And so about 7 years ago, when I started writing this book, I was actually able to go back and pull these stories out and start putting them together and shaping them. And I actually had a book deal with a different publisher about 7 years ago, yeah. And I ended up writing a really different book from the one that was published by Farrar, Straus and Giroux. It was a very bloated memoir. I believe it was way overwritten. My husband read it and really did not like it. And it was rough, let me tell you, it was a rough time. And then I lost my editor. And so I essentially got my book back, which feels really, really great, because then I was able to take it over the past 3-4 years and pare it down to what it has become, and I feel very proud of it. And I feel like it landed in the right place with the right people at the right time. But I'm not gonna lie, there have been moments over the past 7 years where I've just thought, this is just impossible. It's just this you know, hill that I'm climbing, and I'm never gonna reach the top. So back to the second part of your question, what's it like to have everything canceled? Because the world is in such a sad place right now, there's so much sense of perspective that really not for a moment have I had much sadness about having to promote this book this way, just because there are so many things that are so much bigger. But what I'm finding is people are having trouble reading right now, having trouble focusing. So my book is short and it's spare, and I've gotten more people sending me images of this book and saying, I read it in one sitting. I inhaled it. So somehow the timing, these are the silver lining here. This is the kind of book that some people are able to read right now, and it's bringing them hope, distraction, solace. And so that's the surprising piece of this whole thing, is to see how it's entering people's lives, people's kitchens. They're making creme fraiche, they're making stew. It's wild to go onto Instagram, because it's just all day long people are posting what they're cooking and where they're reading this book. And this little pink book pops up in all these homes, in all these laps, next to the dog, next to the pot of stew. It's very moving. And because of Zoom, I've been able to have many more people attend these book events than normally would. So it's actually reaching more people, I think. And I didn't expect that 2 months ago when I finally accepted the fact that, okay, this book tour is not happening. What does that mean? And I've made it a goal to say yes to everything anyone asks, like Zoom into a book group, or write how you're feeling today in your kitchen, stream of consciousness writing for one person. And, it's just, so I'm just saying yes, 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 yes. And, that's, for me, I'm pretty vulnerable, like we all are. And I'm also vulnerable with this book being out there, and I'm putting myself out there in, I think, much more aggressively than I would have if I were doing a regular book tour. So that's, it's been surprising to wake up almost every day and think, okay, who am I talking to now in what part of the world? You know, what community is bringing me in? I joined a book group the other night in Las Vegas. So to be in all these women's kitchens in Las Vegas was so beautiful. They had their cocktails, they were cooking. So anyway, sort of where I am today with this. But as I said, it's every day is different. And I'm not liking every day, honestly. Yesterday was one of the rougher ones. I cried a lot. But I can't untangle in some ways why I'm falling apart. And I don't think it's the book. I think it's just the state of the world and some of the carelessness going on out there, and how there's this feeling of the opening up that's starting to happen in little pockets is terrifying me, because we've all been so careful now for 7, 8, 9 weeks, depending on where we are in the world. And this reopening, I just don't know. I just don't know what's going to happen. I just want to.
There's so much unknowing, right? It's like a practice in making friends with uncertainty and groundlessness. And we have a similar situation here. They've just reopened the primary schools for the little kids, really with the idea that they want to kickstart the economy, not with a sense that it's actually safe for people to go back to school or to work. And, you know, that Buddhist practice of making friends with the monsters that are walking by and sitting with them and saying, okay, I'm going to invite this difficult feeling or this uncertainty in for tea, and sort of defuse some of its toothiness. Its energy, it helps so much. But it's funny that you mentioned the first version of your memoir, because what I've been thinking about so much since reading yours is how perfectly you walk the line of really, you know, radical vulnerability, putting yourself out there. So many key moments of your life that felt like they were written right there in them when they were happening. And at the same time, so tenderly writing with a light touch about the people in your life, about your husband and your children. And that's such a difficult thing to do. And you nailed it. And I think it is, you know, sort of riding these roller coaster waves of getting this book into the world. It feels like it's the book that wanted to come. So well done. And I feel like so many people are relating to it because we see ourselves in all that you have lived and written about. And it's a time where all of us have such raw edges emotionally. You know, I think I was crying within about 2 pages of your book, and we're all right there and not quite sure how to process it. And I think of the writer Richard Rodriguez, who said, in literature, there is only one subject, what it feels like to be alive. And that's what you've written. And I think that's what people really find ringing true within themselves when they're reading. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I guess I want to just ask too, I mean, I know you're a longtime yogi, and one of the things we talk about at Studio B is that meditation and mindfulness is not about sitting on some expensive cushion and doing a 2-hour seated meditation on a hill, you know. That mindfulness is something that unfolds while you're stirring the rice in the kitchen or while you're pulling the weeds in the garden, and that it can take so many different forms. So I'm wondering, what are the practices that are sustaining you right now? What is keeping you steady or helping you to kind of surf the waves when things are difficult?
Cooking is really the constant now. Yoga on and off when I you know, so every day I do something, whether it's a 2-minute plank or a breathing in the pantry, you know. So I when I really need to ground myself, I can do it pretty quickly. But in terms of hours and hours and hours, it's the cooking that's keeping me here, you know. And what I mean is here, sort of not sort of spiraling. Like yesterday, I think I spiraled, and I knew I needed to get into the kitchen. The yoga, it's interesting, about 4 years ago, I wasn't doing enough yoga. I just knew, it just felt like I knew I needed some more. So that's when I decided to do a 2-minute plank every day. And I did that for a year, actually. It didn't mean that I didn't do other yoga and other exercise and other things here and there, but the consistency of doing the same thing every single day for months and months and months is really fascinating, because you see your body in a fresh way every single day. You feel the little shifts in your shoulders. You see injuries travel. You see your mind and where its habits, where it goes first, where it goes second, what, the sort of things you need to push aside in order to stick with the 2 minutes in that plank. So I extended that to doing yoga on the mat every day for a year. And I stuck to that and I did it. That was last year. And that is something I have not been doing over the past few months. And my friend Margie, who's a local yoga teacher as well, Margie Young, wonderful teacher, one of my closest friends, she just texts me every now and then and just says, did you get on your mat or yoga 3 p.m. and we'll FaceTime and do it together. So she's sort of keeping me on the mat. But I know that the fact that I don't have that as a daily practice right now is a mistake. And I'm saying it and somehow I'm not dealing with it. So maybe now that I'm saying it to you, it'll happen.
We're also sitting in the middle of a crazy ass pandemic when nothing is normal. And so we all know all the self-care things we should be doing every day. And then there's the mere fact that it's just really damn hard sometimes. And so I feel like we have to fall back on that self-compassion. Say, all right, I'm doing the best I can. Meanwhile, you're launching a book. It's a worldwide effort. You're putting yourself into the world. There's a lot of yoga happening there that doesn't look like asana. And I will say, I've been so inspired by your handstands. I'm not a super strong yogi, and I've never been one who's huge for going upside down, but you've always been great about that. And thank you for inspiring me in that regard, because you kick my ass in some ways, and I think, okay, come on, handstand, let's do it. Phyllis is over there in Berkeley in the kitchen in a handstand waiting for something to bake.
Right. Although I'm dealing with something, I have arthritis now in my thumbs. So over the past 6 weeks, I've transitioned from, I've taken everything down to my forearms. And that has been a great lesson as well, because it's strengthening different parts of my body. And again, this idea of doing the same practice, it's not every day, but every few days, noticing how everything changes. Well, that's really the truth in life. That's my book. Everything changes, right?
Exactly. And that's why, too, I meant to say earlier, I love the title so much. And I know you probably chose it a year ago, but the fact that your book is called Everything is Under Control could not be more perfect. Even the title alone has given me comfort in this moment, because it just reminds me to laugh and say, well, nobody's in control, so we just got to let be and take it one day at a time.
Yeah, we certainly do. It's I don't know what it is about this week too, that it's there. I don't know if other people are feeling, there's some sort of shift that's really throwing everyone for a loop, everybody around me. Maybe it's the opening up. Maybe it's almost like we established this new normal, but it's gone. So we can't, as you would say, we can't get attached to that.
Exactly. And now I'm wondering, there in Berkeley, I mean, it's such a foodie capital. What are you seeing happening in the restaurant world there, and how are your colleagues and your peers who are in the food in the restaurant world coping? I mean, I know it's a terrifying time for so many industries, but the restaurant world in particular seems just devastated.
It is, yeah, and we're just hearing about places closing and also yoga studios closing, and but some of them are just holding strong, and we're trying to support some of our local neighborhood places, and that they do curbside and pick up. So it's once a week we've been ordering takeout, which has been great. It's very expensive because it's, restaurant prices and then some, but it's worth it. And it's also nice because I'm very sick and tired of my food. I think we're all a little sick and tired of the same.
Yeah, we're all sick and tired of it. Yeah. And the endless dishes. It feels like food prep involved in having a family at home all day long, eating 3 meals a day.
The laundry and the dishes, I don't get it. I don't know why it's so much more. It's just not.
And you know, there's so much Zen wisdom about that says, okay, folding the laundry is a meditation. It can be enlightening. Doing the dishes is just as sacred as, you know, sitting in a sanctuary somewhere. And it's so hard to remember because you do feel sort of bogged down in it all. And it's aspirational for sure. But in the moment, sometimes it's so hard to remember.
It is so hard to remember. It's true. Although I took a class a few years ago from someone who told me, she was a mom, and she said that when she folds laundry, she always puts a yoga block between her thighs. And I've tried that. It's hard. but there is something about waking up the body, like while you do this mundane task, that I thought was sort of a brilliant combination of things. And then again, that becomes her daily practice.
Exactly. Yeah. Building that continuity, that consistency, even when everything else is changing. So I'm wondering, who is inspiring you right now? Like, who is someone you're looking to when you feel like you're losing your drishti and you're looking at their model and saying, okay, yeah, that's what we need more of?
Well, on a sort of personal home level, my husband is amazing in a crisis. It's almost annoying. He's so nice and so calm and so supportive, and it's great to have that, I have to say, because I'm not good in a crisis at all. We always talk about how I'm good with the little things, like I'm good when a glass breaks. Like if a glass falls on the ground, I'm like, whatever. Whereas he's like,
restaurant industry right there, right? After you've worked in restaurants long enough, it doesn't matter if the glass breaks.
Exactly. And also, I really try with the little things to never get riled up, because I feel like if all those little things are riling you up, it's just then your life becomes all about frustration and yelling. So for example, he'll open the fridge and he'll say, oh gosh, there's nothing here, you know, and I'll say, step aside. I got this. So with the little things, I'm pretty good, and so we're a good pair in that way. In terms of out in the world, there are a lot. I have an author site, so it's Phyllis Grant Author, and I have a tab on there that says COVID help, and in there I have listed lots of organizations that are feeding frontline hospital workers, and I'm also about to add a bunch of other links there to help support dancers, choreographers, and so on, and a bunch of podcasts. So there will be probably about 50 links there that people can check out by the end of the weekend. So one of my pivots with this book tour has been to start collecting these links and get the word out to start supporting, not just with money, but with listening to people's stories. And just, we all need to start brainstorming on how we can help people, because there's only so much money we can give, because we're all running out of money. And also, it just needs to be sort of a community surge. That's what needs to happen to support those in need. So that sort of, I realized today, actually on the mat, listening to your voice, that you reminded me of community. And I'm very grateful for that, that I need to sort of take this little world in my kitchen where I'm cooking and doing my thing and use that to groundswell and get people, get out there and help people. So I'm open to ideas, and there's not one person I'm looking to right now, but I'm really listening. I'm listening, and I'm reading, and I'm just desperate to help. So that's sort of where I am right now.
You know, I think we need to connect, and a lot of people are quite isolated and lonely. You know, it's like we have these polarities, people who are living in their house with their family or their children, and they're on top of one another 24 hours a day. And then people who are isolated and they're aching for connection because they're sitting at home alone all day long. You know, seniors especially, I think of the elderly who are stuck alone, suffering. And it's those little bits of connection, like reading your book, or the fact that you're, you know, dialing in for a book club in Las Vegas, connecting with a bunch of women with their cocktails. Even the practice of making those silly yoga practices and throwing them up on YouTube, there's a vulnerability in it because we're putting ourselves out there in new ways. I know I resisted doing any kind of online teaching for a long time because I knew I wanted it to be perfect and this and that and that and that. And then the pandemic hit and I thought, okay, well, hell, let's do some yoga online. And it has been one of the greatest gifts of this whole experience, an absolute silver lining, to reconnect with people from California and Oregon and Boston and to practice together, even across the miles. So if we can find those small ways to connect, it's such a good reminder that this reality of interdependence is still underlying everything we are. And those relationships are life-giving when so much feels like it's really draining our prana and our life force.
Absolutely. And, you know, it reminds me of what I've been doing on Instagram. I've been posting some cooking videos that are, they're pretty goofy. And it's exactly what you said. It's like, there's nothing perfect about anything I'm doing. You know, generally I have not washed my face. The kitchen is a mess and things are flying and, you know, but that's life, that's cooking. And people, much like they've said with my book, people have been saying about these videos that it's calming to watch me cook, which I think is so funny but it makes sense because that's where I go to calm myself.
You're in the flow. That's your zone. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that people like seeing that. They also like seeing that things aren't perfect because most cooking shows, everything's all lined up in these perfect little bowls and, you know, there's no flow, I think. So I've enjoyed sort of showing that flow, which is exactly what happens. You just never know. Let's open the drawer. What's in there? What can we make tonight? And there's no planning. And I think it would be helpful for a lot of people to be able to do that in their kitchens, to not worry so much about planning ahead of time, but just especially in the pandemic, because we don't have flour sometimes, and we have those sort of old carrots in the back of the drawer. Let's make stock. So
it's such a great excuse to be really present, isn't it? And to use what you've got. I was just chatting with Paula, our director of outreach, about how we have had kind of a hard time accessing groceries because we haven't been going to the grocery store as well. We've had deliveries only for about 8 weeks. And we found a local farm here in Switzerland. And so they've just been kind of dumping random vegetables on our doorstep at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we come in and figure out what the heck to do with them. And it's been such a fantastic gift. As a fairly terrible cook myself too, it has forced me to try new things and really, you know, like you said, dig something out of the back of the fridge and make something of it. And there's almost a connection to our grandmothers' generations that I feel in that, you know, they made bread and gravy for dinner if they had to. You know, I think of my poor farmer grandmother on the prairie, and that's what she had. She used everything. And in this pandemic mentality, we're kind of coming back to that.
We are. And we've had to cook. I mean, people are cooking, people who've never cooked in their lives, which I just think is extraordinary. Yeah. And people, I keep thinking about when we look back on this period of time, what we're going to think in a decade. What are our kids going to think about? I mean, they're so resilient. They're upstairs doing their remote schooling. Although I did put tape at the top of the stairs because every time I do one of these, a kid like comes running down the stairs. Mom, I'm like, no. Well, I always say, if there's a fire, fine, come down, but otherwise don't come down. But anyway, blue tape. But they're up there doing their thing, and they're so resilient. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but thank God for those phones because they are able to see their friends and connect with them. Imagine if this were 1988. I mean, with
totally different experience. Yeah. As much as screens are channels, they are a gift to all of us right now.
I know.
Speaking. But you know, I think that quality that you talked about in the kitchen of just being real on Instagram, cooking, that's exactly what people were drawn to in your blog when you started blogging about cooking with kids. This idea that you don't have to just feed them chicken nuggets and French fries, that you can make them legitimate food and have them actually be involved with it. And yeah, it'll be messy and chaotic, but it will also be so nourishing and life-giving, and that we can give them credit for that capability.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing that people are hopefully experiencing now, and part of what I was showing on my blog, is that it does get easier the more you do it. I mean, at one point I counted up how many school lunches I'd made for the kids. You know, it was so many thousands. And at this point it's tripled, you know. So you learn every time you peel that carrot, every time you think, what can I put into this lunch or this dinner or this breakfast that's healthful, that tastes good, you know, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be organic always. It doesn't have to be local. It doesn't have to be any of that. As long as it's what's in your fridge, and it has some flavor. One thing I always used to do is say to myself, okay, would I eat this? I'm not going to put anything in their lunch if I wouldn't want to eat it, because it's so easy to just, you know, put bland peanut butter and jelly and that's it and be done with it. So, but I did enjoy that. I haven't made a school lunch in a few months now, but the creativity of that. But I think it is interesting now that people are having to cook, and much like doing the plank every day for a year, if you're having to cook dinner every night for 3 months, things are going to change in your house. And that's partly like looking back, it's going to be really fascinating to see what people learned and what they carried forward. Or maybe everyone's going to be so relieved they're just going to get takeout. But then we can support all the restaurants. So.
And hopefully the restaurants are still open and the yoga studio is still open. So we'll see what the next year brings. But we have some questions coming in, so I'm going to make sure we have time. Christine says, dancing, cooking, writing, loving, all of these incredibly evocative experiences put us in the flow state. Can you talk about how your writing and cooking are both forms of mindfulness and flow? Your book is stunning.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Well, two things. I'm just gonna remember the word flow. Sorry, my brain is like, it's all over the place today. So the process of taking this big bloated memoir and paring it down took years. Sometimes it was only 5, 6, 7 minutes a day. Sometimes it was the middle of the night. A few times it was at a bar. I was like waiting for a friend. I'd have my book on my phone, or I'd have my computer. Several times people told me actually to close the computer and put it away at a bar. How they didn't like having computers at the bar. But wherever I was, I would sort of touch the book a little bit. So the flow process, so gratifying. It wasn't this feeling of, oh no, I have to pare down this book. I have to, it says my internet on the table.
Your bandwidth is low. That's okay though. I can still see you. You might have teenagers on screens using bandwidth right now.
Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem. That's great.
Oh, okay.
So, in fits and starts, sometimes at a bar, just whenever you could, to pare down the bloated memoir.
And it always felt like a bit of a meditation, moving the words around. And so much so, at some point, my best friend Marianne told me, stop touching your book, send it to your agent, let go. Because the truth is, it felt so good to move the words around, to rewrite it for so many years, that it became a daily practice. That all I wanted was those 10 minutes so I could just work on the book. So very similar to dance back in the day, when all I wanted to do was move. When as a teenager, while I did the dishes, I was dancing. I was never stopped flowing and moving. And I think it accesses the same thing in my body, whether I'm cooking or writing or dancing, it's the same. It really, that's something I've come to realize. Yoga, it's all the same thing. All those things for me are grounding. They don't feel like work, I guess is what I would say. That it's not a struggle. It's the opposite of a struggle. It's moving towards, a more relaxed state for me.
Kind of getting out of the way, right? And letting the creation kind of move through you.
Yes, exactly. I don't know if I answered that question, but flow, definitely flow throughout my life. That's what I'm always wanting to do, is flow.
And do you have a sense of where your life flows after all this, after the book launch settles? Or do you have something already in mind that you're really feeling called to doing? Or do you just want to sit on your couch with a gin martini and for like a month?
That's such a good question. I I'm having a lot. I think that's partly the crisis of my week is that because I feel like I need to do something bigger. I feel like I need to help people. I think that's just where I am this week. It has to be bigger than the book. It has to be bigger than my kitchen, than my family, than my world. So that's very vague, but somehow there has to be an outreach of some kind. I do want to keep telling stories that are not often told, like stories of postpartum depression, because I had a particular kind that was very difficult that also involved intrusive thoughts and OCD. So I want to get the word out more about that to support women and normalize it. And also perimenopause. So I'm in it. I'm deep in it. And these are the next stories I want to tell.
And there are two things people don't talk about, or they talk about them in hushed tones in particular corners of our lives.
Yes.
And I love that, on your website, you've got resources for postpartum depression. I love how raw and completely authentic you were in writing about those aspects of your life. So, thank you for that. It's so refreshing. And yet you do it in a way that's also graceful and refined. I think we've all read memoirs that sometimes feel like people are just vomiting up their lives and you're trying to make sense of it. And yours emerged with such a grace and such I love the way in the description we talk about appetite and desire and how that sort of meanders through life. And we could really watch that happening in yours. And yet finish the book and feel hungry to learn more about you and what you've learned. So I look forward to you continuing to serve in that way.
Thank you. Wow. Well, I think part of the process of paring it down made the book more universal because it's more of an essence of these various milestones in my life. Like when we get married, it's just we kiss and then we eat 12 cakes. And that's all you need to know about that day, frankly. And some of the sections are a little longer, like the birth sections and the fight with my husband and so on. But I feel like that fight is a fight we've all had with our partners. Just not hearing each other, just like these layers of years and years of patterns. And so I hope that it does reach people the way it reached you, and that people can see themselves in the book. That's all I can ask for. That's amazing.
I know they will. I've already heard from so many people who have picked it up and loved it and seen themselves. And I think that is also a testament to what an amazingly rad life you have, all the cool things you've done and the diverse skill sets that you have and that you embody all at the same time. So props to you for finding a way to weave those into this tapestry that's such a beautiful portrait of a life.
Thank you. And thanks for using the word rad. I miss hearing the word rad. Hella rad.
Okay, I have to say, and I don't know how kosher it is for me to say this in public, but I expect more F-bombs in your book. I really admire the fact, I think I counted one F-bomb. It was perfect.
It's at the birth, I believe. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's a powerful word. And I don't use it as much as I used to. And I don't know why. It's like I used it for a while and then it started to feel forced. And I'm very careful, although I did post about cookies last night and I had to use an F-bomb. I don't know. It's just.
I'm a big believer when it's appropriate.
When it's appropriate, but it can be overused.
In Buddhism, you talk about skillful speech and it's perfect. All things in the right time, I am wondering too, and we'll open up for questions soon too, if anyone else has questions you want to add, feel free to type them in the chat. First of all, did you know you wanted to include recipes? And second of all, how did you choose what to include? Because I'm sure it was a difficult process.
It was. And originally I was going to write a cookbook. So I had collected hundreds of recipes. So let's try to think of how to talk about this. I used to have them throughout the book. And I also had photos. So, but it never gelled. Partly because the way it's written, my goal was to make it cinematic. So almost like scenes. and very physical, like looking up the side of a building and going down into standing split, and just sort of the pulsing, the movement of my life. And when you put recipes and photos in there, it's like a little pause, and it never worked. And my agent was the one who finally told me, put them at the end, see how it feels. And she was so right. So now where the recipes used to be in the text, there's blank space. And so I think of that as a moment to breathe, to pause, to take it in before you move on to the next section. And in terms of the recipes, I tried to choose recipes that were more like templates, either really simple recipes, excuse me, like creme fraiche, something that 2 ingredients takes 2 minutes, or something like a tart dough that has many applications, or a stew that you can throw, the braised chicken, you can throw every briny thing in your fridge in there, all your capers, all your onions, leftover turned wine, throw it on the stove for 6 hours, and then you get some magic at the end. So I tried to put recipes in there that people, they would have flexibility. It's actually, they're good pandemic recipes, frankly. And again, who knew?
Right.
And also I wanted people throughout the world to be able to make these recipes and not have to search far and wide for the ingredients. So except for one thing, my strawberry tart in here, which calls for really tiny, perfect little strawberries, which are pretty much impossible to find. Every other recipe, you can get the ingredients pretty much anywhere in the world. So that's
a Berkeley thing. Are they particularly easy to find in California?
Yes, but only around this time of year at the farmer's market. Yeah, and there's something called fraises du bois, which, so it's little tiny French strawberry, and they taste like strawberry jam. I mean, they're almost reduced down, almost like early girl tomatoes, those really potent tomatoes that have been deprived of water. So they're quite small, and they're almost like tomato sauce inside. They're pretty incredible. Those are easier to find now throughout the country, I believe. But these little strawberries, yeah, but I do have a little, in the head note, a little warning saying, don't make this recipe unless you can find these strawberries. But I said, I hate saying that, but but every other recipe.
And that's what you did so nicely with the recipes, is your voice still is clear throughout there. It's not that you write a beautiful memoir and then you leave some uptight recipes with just clear instructions. It's that your voice and your spirit and your personality still shows up in the recipe.
Thank you. That was my goal. I really like that.
Terrible cook. I still read through all the recipes.
That's amazing.
I don't have the skill set, but I enjoyed so much hearing your voice. So thank you for that.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. Well, I like the idea of being in the kitchen with people. It's sort of like the cooking videos. I'm talking people through, oh, if you don't have a lemon, you can use a lime, and so that was the goal with the narrative style recipe. Again, giving people more options.
Well, we have a question about cooking. 2 people with the same question. Let's see. This is Paula again. She says she was working on the braised short ribs when we popped on. She says, I usually dislike cooking, but I've realized it's about the rush and hubbub and fitting it in with sports and meetings. Now with this opening up of time, I've been enjoying trying new recipes and really enjoying it. During regular times with your kids' activities and other obligations, how do you find the time for cooking? And then Sarah adds that she has the same question, but she's wondering about finding time to write.
Well, in terms of the cooking, I'm home all day, every day, and I have been for 17 years taking care of the kids. So the time thing for me was never an issue. Having said that, things have gotten really busy lately and over the past year for the book and so on. And my husband has been out of town a lot. So I really tried to come up with recipes that it could extend into more meals. So it's not just, if I make tart dough, I make a double recipe and I put one in the freezer. I make sure I have garlic oil made, creme fraiche, salad dressing, make triple the amount you normally make, use it as a marinade on a chicken, or drizzle it on a sandwich, right? So think about how you can extend everything you make into a few more meals. And also toppings are great. So around here, we like to do make your own salad night. So I'll put out 15 different things, like some nuts and some hummus and some pickled carrots and this and that, all things that last for a while in the fridge. And then it's not like I'm making everyone their own meal. People are coming in and sort of curating their meal to their liking. And it's fun. And all those components can be in the fridge and extend into another 3, 4, 5, 6 meals. So that's something I definitely have been playing more with. In terms of the writing, I think maybe think about what I was doing over the years with this book. Is just, it's okay to write for 5 minutes. Just like it's okay to do a 2-minute plank as your yoga practice. You can free write for 5 minutes a day on your computer. Just have a document open that you never close on your computer. So every time you have 5 minutes, sit down and just move your fingers. And a friend of mine told me a few years ago that if you want to be a writer and you want to improve your writing, just every time you move your fingers, that counts. In other words, if you're writing a tweet, if you're writing an email, like I did, 25 years of emails became a book essentially. So don't be afraid to have little pieces of writing everywhere and then pull them together. And then you can pare it down like I did. So much like you were saying about putting these yoga videos up, it doesn't need to be perfect. It's never perfect the first time. Just writing a little caption for an Instagram post sometimes takes me an hour. It's just, I don't just throw words out there. I can't. And most people can't. And don't be afraid for it to suck. That's what I would say. And
Which is advice for everything in life. I think don't be afraid for it to suck.
Yeah.
I would ask, what can we do to support people who are launching books right now and people who work in restaurants right now?
Okay. So for books, call your local independent bookstore. If they're not answering the phone, go walk by it, look in the window, see if anyone's there, leave a note, go online, research which ones in your neighborhood are doing deliveries. Try to initially just order all your books from independent bookstores and booksellers. You can go to Bookshop. I don't know if you know about Bookshop, but basically it's a storefront for independent booksellers all over, I believe all over the world. And they've raised over $1 million for independent bookstores. So you can buy your book through Bookshop and it supports your local bookstore. So start there, but mainly just go knock on some doors and peek in and see if these people need your support. In terms of restaurants, I actually have on my author site, Phyllis Grant author, under COVID help, I have a list of about 10 different places up, and I'm adding some more this weekend, as I said, how you can support restaurants. But again, walk by, look in. There probably are people in there, and they're making food that you can buy. And if you feel safe, and they have their protocol set up in a way that makes you comfortable, you can buy food from them. Sometimes they're selling flour. Some restaurants have set up little markets. So I think it's old school. Pick up the phone and walk and just peek and see where people need some help. And then look at those links, and I'm going to keep adding to that. And
I'll make sure to post those links as well so that they're really clear for people to access after we post the video of this recording. I would ask too, for people who want to buy your book or who want to follow you or learn more about your work, how can they best do that? PhyllisGrant.com. Yes.
And I'm most active on Instagram, so it's @-and-bella, and I'm just daily, as I said, posting cooking videos and various links to what I'm up to. But it's all consolidated on the author website that launched a few weeks ago. So that's the best way to find what I'm up to. Yeah.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have any last minute questions? If you do, speak now. Otherwise, I don't want to keep you because I know you're a busy woman with reaching out to so many people over the globe right now. So is there anything else that you didn't get to say that you want to make sure that you can share? Anything that's on your mind or your heart?
No, I think I've pretty much shared my heart and soul. Yeah, no, this was really great. I was surprised by how vulnerable I felt. And in a good way. I think part of it is hearing your voice and doing the practice with your class this morning just opened me up in a great way. And I'm really grateful to you, Rachel, for being in my life.
so interesting how the sensory memory lingers, because it has been at least 5 years since we practiced together, and the fact that someone's voice can transport you to that moment in the same way that, you know, reading your book and the words and whatnot really transport the reader. I want to give a shout out to yoga studios right now as well. I mean, that's how we met originally. And one of the best things about being a yoga teacher is you meet people from all walks of life who roll into the studio and eventually become your dear friends. And we met at a studio that's woman-owned, that started in a rough neighborhood in Oakland and is now a gentrified neighborhood in Oakland. And yoga and meditation studios are one more business that will be hard to sustain during this whole pandemic reality. So I think just the idea that we can all do what we can to lift up these small businesses and books and restaurants that are still managing to keep on trucking even when things are hard.
Yeah, that sort of goes back to this idea of getting out there, peeking in to the yoga studios, calling, because I keep hearing about restaurants and yoga studios. Just yesterday, just some that have closed. It just breaks my heart. And I didn't realize they were struggling because they didn't have some sort of active GoFundMe fundraiser going on. Not everyone has the resources or the time to do that. And I learned that about my local bookstore, that they now have gotten the loan, but they didn't initially get the loan from, federal loan. And I didn't know that until I asked. Yeah. So we need to ask, really check in.
And is that Mrs. Dalloway's?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. But they're knock on wood, they're doing better. Yeah. Things look good. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Phyllis. We will have this recording up for anybody who wants to watch it again or share it with people you love. And in the meantime, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. It's just wonderful to see you. And we've got all kinds of kind comments coming in from people who are so excited to read your book and enjoyed hearing you.
Thank you for sharing all this with me. I'm grateful.
My pleasure, Phyllis. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.